I was halfway into my sister's hall closet fishing for a spare hanger when my aunt cornered me and dropped her voice to that soft, sticky register people use at funerals. "Sweetheart," she said, "maybe don't bring up the whole work situation tonight. It's a happy night. No reason to put a cloud over it." 3 hours later, my sister's fiancé leaned across the dinner table, swirled his beer, and told me with a grin that I couldn't land a trail shift at the best kitchen in the city if my life depended on it. That place only took the best, and the best didn't include people like me. So I put down my wine, looked him right in the eye, and said, "That kitchen is mine. I'm the chef. Your trail is over." If you want to know what happened after that, the engagement party, the ring on the table, the part where everyone found out who I actually was, make sure you stick around to the end and tap subscribe so the algorithm doesn't bury this on you. And before we get into it, I'm always curious. Where in the world are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. Now let me back up, because to understand why I did what I did, you have to understand how I let it get that far. For about 10 months, my family thought I was unemployed. They weren't malicious about it, exactly. They were just sure of it, the way you're sure the sun comes up. No evidence required, no questions asked. It started because I went quiet. I'd been opening a new restaurant, our flagship, the biggest swing of my career, and that kind of project doesn't leave room for much else. I was at the building by 5 most mornings, and I wasn't getting home until past midnight. I missed my cousin's baby shower. I missed my dad's retirement lunch. I sent a lot of texts that just said, "Slammed, call you soon," and then I didn't call soon because soon never came. To me, those were sacrifices I'd make again in a heartbeat. To my family, apparently, they were a pattern. A woman in her early 30s goes dark, stops showing up, stops posting, looks exhausted every time you do see her, and they filled in the blank with the simplest story available. She got let go. Poor thing, the restaurant industry's brutal. You know how it is, all those places closing? What they didn't know was that I owned the place. I'd owned the first one for 6 years. The new one made 3. I'd built it the hard way, the only way I knew how. I started as a line cook at 22, burning my forearms on the salamander, getting screamed at by a chef who threw a sheet pan past my head once for plating too slow. I worked doubles. I staged for free on my days off. I ate ramen for a year so I could save up. When my parents passed, they died 8 months apart, my last year of cooking school. I took the small life insurance money, and instead of being smart and safe with it, I sank every dollar into a 40-seat room in a part of town nobody wanted to drive to. People told me I was crazy. The first year I made nothing. The second year I made a little. By the 4th year we had a James Beard nomination and a 6-week waitlist. And last spring, 2 months before that family dinner, an inspector none of us knew was an inspector ate a quiet tasting at the bar, and we got a Michelin star. A second restaurant followed. A small group, my name on the lease, my name on the liquor license, my name on the line of credit that kept me up at night. None of which my family had any clue about, because the kind of work I did doesn't photograph well. There's no graduation, no big announcement, no ring. There's just 12-hour days in a hot room and the slow accumulation of trust from strangers who decide your food is worth driving across town for. My success was quiet. My sister's was loud, and in my family, loud is the only kind that registers. The dinner was at my aunt's in the suburbs, the official celebration of my little sister getting engaged. I should say up front that I love my sister. I practically raised her after our parents died. She was 16, I was 23, and for a few brutal years I was the closest thing she had to a mother. I paid for her car. I co-signed her first apartment. When she wanted to move into a nicer place, I quietly covered the gap in her rent for almost a year and called it a loan we both knew she'd never repay. So when I walked up to that house with a $120 bottle of wine in my hand, I wanted, more than anything, to just be happy for her. My aunt got to me before I'd even gotten my shoes off. That little whisper about the work situation. I straightened up, one boot half unlaced, and stared at her, and I understood in about 2 seconds flat what they all thought. The pity in her eyes was a specific, well-rehearsed pity. They thought I'd been fired. They thought my silence was shame. "Oh," I said. It was the only thing that came out. It's nothing to be ashamed of, she said, patting my arm. These things happen. You aimed high, that's not a crime. You'll land on your feet, you're a smart girl. And then she steered me by the elbow toward the kitchen like I was elderly, and the night began. He was already holding court when I got into the main room, my sister's fiancé. I'll call him what my sister called him that night, beaming. Her brilliant, ambitious guy. He was 29, gym-built, with that haircut that costs more than it looks like it should, and he had the loud, easy confidence of a man who has never once been the smartest person in a room and has also never once suspected it. My sister hung off his arm and introduced us, and the first thing he did was decline to shake my hand. He just lifted his beer at me, a little toast, and looked me up and down like he was pricing a used car. "You're the cousin sorry the sister, right?" he said. "The one in food. Or we're in food." He let that hang. "Rough out there right now, huh? Lot of spots going under." "It can be rough," I said. My sister jumped in to tell me he was about to make a huge move. He was a sous chef, she said. He was so talented, everybody said so, and he'd just landed a trail at the most exclusive restaurant in the city. They only took the best, she said. People applied for years and never even got a callback. "Which place?" I asked, keeping my voice flat and friendly. He named my restaurant. "Cinder. I want you to understand what that felt like. It was like watching someone describe your house to you, in detail, as a place they were about to break into. Cinder was mine. The flagship. The new one. The one that had eaten 10 months of my life. He was standing in my aunt's living room telling a roomful of people who already pitied me that he was about to walk into the building I'd built and dazzle them. "Oh, really?" I said. "Cinder. I've heard it's hard to get into." "Hard?" He laughed. "It's a fortress. They run you through a tasting, a skills trail, a sit-down with the chef owner herself. Most people don't make it past the first round. But you know," he shrugged, going for modest and missing by a mile. "When you've got it, you've got it. When's the trail?" I asked. 9 a.m. With the chef. He puffed his chest out. "She's supposed to be a real shark. Cleaning house, bringing in new blood, getting rid of all the old burnouts who can't keep up." My calendar for Monday had exactly one entry before service prep. Final trail, Sue's candidate, 9 a.m. I hadn't looked at the name in days. I looked at his face and I knew, without checking, whose name it was. The shark, by the way, was me. And the only thing I was cleaning house of, in my actual real life, was a list of vendors who'd shorted us on produce. We weren't getting rid of our veterans. I'd just signed off on the most generous benefits package any kitchen in the city offered specifically to keep them. Because good cooks are worth their weight in gold, and I'd lost too many to burn out to lose anymore. But he didn't know any of that. He was reciting buzzwords he'd read on some restaurant industry blog, using my own life as a prop to make me feel small. "Well," I said, lifting my glass. "Good luck Monday." "Luck's for people without talent," he said, and turned back to his audience. I faded into the corner of the couch and let the rest of the evening wash over me, and it was, honestly, a masterclass in being pitied. My aunt kept loading my plate. "Eat, eat, you look so thin, you've been under so much stress." She gave me the good chair, the soft one, like I was recovering from surgery. Every kindness was a little needle. My sister glowed. He held forth, and at some point over dessert, he decided to twist the knife. "The thing about the food world," he announced to the table, fork tapping his plate, "is it's full of dead weight. People who got lucky early and just coasted. My generation, we're hungry, we're sharp, we don't wait for handouts." He looked right at me when he said handouts. "That's why a place like Cinder wants me. They need people who actually get it." And then, leaning in with this oily little smile, "Hey, don't worry though. If it works out for me there, maybe I could put in a word. They always need dishwashers. Something steady." Tied you. Over the whole table, chuckled, warm and easy, like he'd said something generous. My aunt actually sighed. "He's so thoughtful," she murmured. "So secure. It's wonderful for your sister." I took a bite of cheesecake I couldn't taste, and I made a decision. Here's the thing about me that none of them knew. Information is the whole game. In my kitchen, I know the provenance of every scallop. I know which farm, which boat, which day. I read every resume that crosses my past like it's a contract, because a kitchen runs on trust and I've been burned by liars before. And this man was about to hand me his entire life on paper and ask me to grade it. I drove home that night and I didn't feel triumphant. I felt cold and clear. The woman who'd sat on that couch absorbing their pity was gone by the time I hit the highway, and the one who ran 2 restaurants and 40 employees was back behind the wheel. I let myself into my dark house, I poured a glass of water, and I opened my laptop, and I pulled his candidate file. On paper, he was impressive. Culinary degree, a real school, a good one. A resume studded with the right names, stages at 2 restaurants I respected, a Sioux title at a third, a cover letter that hit every keyword I'd ever look for, all the right language about discipline and creativity and respect for product. But something was off, the way something's off when a dish looks perfect and tastes like nothing. He claimed 2 years under a chef I happened to know personally, a friend, a guy I'd cooked next to for years. He claimed proficiency in techniques that, frankly, a real Sioux at the places he listed would consider basic, and the way he phrased it, padded and overwrought, read like someone describing a thing he'd watched on a video, not done with his hands. So I did what I do. I made some calls, not Monday morning calls, late Sunday night calls to people who owe me favors. The first crack showed up around 1 in the morning. The chef he claimed 2 years under told me he'd never heard the name. The guy had staged there exactly once, an unpaid trial, for a single brunch service, and hadn't been asked back. Then I looked at his timeline and found a hole. 8 months, papered over by stretching the dates on the jobs around it. Then I found the real reason he'd left his last actual job, the Sioux position. It wasn't for a better opportunity, the way the resume said. The place had been shut down for 2 weeks by the health department, and in the aftermath there'd been a quiet thing about missing inventory, product walking out the back door, and a separation that involved lawyers and a signed agreement that he'd never talk about it. I sat back in my chair at 2 in the morning, and I'll be honest with you, there was a part of me that wanted to feel nothing but the high of it. I had him, but mostly I felt tired and a little sad, because somewhere underneath the lies there was a guy so scared of being ordinary that he'd built his whole identity out of other people's credentials. And my sister was going to marry him. I didn't have to set a trap. He was already walking into the building Monday morning believing he'd be charming 3 strangers, and instead he was going to be sitting across a stainless steel table from the person who'd written half the menu he'd claimed to admire, with a folder full of his own lies between us. Sunday night, my aunt called, syrupy as ever. She wanted to check on me after I'd left dinner so abruptly. And then she got to the real reason. "Your sister's guy is just the sweetest," she said. "He told me after you left that once he's settled at the new place, he might be able to get you on. Washing dishes, just to start. He said not to get your hopes up, they don't love hiring people who've been, let go, but he's willing to try for you." I sat there looking at a spreadsheet of his fabrications glowing on my screen. "That's very thoughtful," I said. "I have to go, actually. Big morning tomorrow." "Oh, an interview?" she asked, hungry for it. "Something like that," I said. "A very important 9 a.m., and I hung up before she could ask another thing. Monday morning, the test kitchen at Cinder was dead quiet. My chef de cuisine sat to my left with a notepad. My general manager sat to my right. The skills station was set up the way it always was for a final trail. A cutting board, a few proteins, a sauce we'd ask the candidate to identify and rebuild. At 8:59, my host buzzed up to say the candidate had arrived. "Send him in," I said. The door opened and he walked through it in a sharp suit, hand already out, that predatory grin already on, the words, "Good morning, real pleasure to meet," already halfway out of his mouth. And then he saw me. And I have watched a lot of things collapse in my life. Soufflés, sauces, a whole walk-in's worth of product when a compressor died on a Friday. But I have never seen anything fall apart as fast as that smile fell off his face. The color drained out of him in about a second and a half. He stood frozen in the middle of my kitchen with his hand still out, shaking it, like a man who'd reached out to a doorknob that turned out to be a stovetop. "You're," he said. He couldn't finish. I didn't stand. I didn't take his hand. "I'm the chef owner," I said. "Have a seat. We've got a lot to cover." I gestured at the stool across the steel. He sat down like his legs had stopped working. His eyes went from me to my chef to my GM and back. What are you doing here? This is my restaurant, I said. Cinder is mine. This is my chef de cuisine, this is my general manager, and this is your final trail. Welcome. I opened the folder. Let's start with the resume. It's ambitious. You list 2 years under a chef I happen to know quite well. So I'm curious, what did you run on his station? I guard manger, mostly, and then I moved up to. He's never heard of you, I said. You staged there once. One brunch. They didn't ask you back. His mouth opened and closed. I slid the cutting board toward him. Let's do the practical since you're here. Break down this chicken into 8, the way you would on a busy Saturday. Then tell me what's in this sauce and rebuild it for me. It was a sauce a first-year cook should be able to read blindfolded. A beurre blanc, broken down to its bones. Nothing exotic. He picked up the knife. His hand was trembling. He made the first cut in completely the wrong place, hacked at the joint, tore the skin, and put the knife down. He looked at the little dish of sauce like it was written in a language he'd never seen. There's butter, and an acid, and a shallot reduction, and it's the first thing anyone learns, I said. You list advanced saucier on here. You list a culinary degree from a school I called this morning. You attended for 1 semester. You didn't graduate. His face went gray. And your last real job, the sous position, you wrote that you left for a better opportunity. You left because the place got shut down by the county, and because product was disappearing out the back door, and because they made you sign something on your way out so they wouldn't have to involve the police. He shot up off the stool. You can't. This isn't an interview. This is harassment. You set me up. It is an interview, I said, and I let my voice go to the temperature I keep for vendors who try to cheat me. And you failed it. You lied about your schooling. You lied about your experience. You lied about why you left a job you were probably lucky to have. You stood in my aunt's living room and offered to get me a dishwashing shift out of pity, in my own building, and you didn't even have the skill to break down a chicken. You're not new blood. You're a liability with a good haircut. Get out of my kitchen. He stood there shaking, and for just a second I saw the scared kid under the suit, and I almost softened. Then I remembered the word handout, the way he'd aimed it at me, and I didn't. Please, he whispered. My fiancé, this job. The trail is over, I said. My GM will see you out. Don't list this restaurant anywhere. Don't contact anyone who works here. If you do, we'll be in touch about the documents you submitted, and you won't like that conversation. Out. He grabbed his bag and he was gone, the door swinging behind him. My chef de cuisine let out a long, low breath. Well, she said, that's a no. I had her flag his file and blacklist the name across both restaurants. And then I sat there in the quiet and I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I felt like I had a much worse evening ahead of me. I was right. By the time I got home, there were 19 missed calls and a wall of texts, most of them from my sister, escalating from what did you do to he's destroyed to you. Set him up to you're sick. You couldn't stand to see anyone happy. You got fired and you decided to ruin his life. My aunt weighed in too. This is unacceptable. You owe that boy an apology. You've embarrassed this family. The story had already calcified, and in it I was the jealous, washed-up failure who'd sabotaged a good man out of spite. It was the only version that fit the picture they'd painted of me, so it was the version they reached for. I made tea and let the phone buzz itself out on the counter, and then my sister called a 5th time and I picked up. She was sobbing so hard she could barely get words out. He'd come home a wreck, she said. I'd humiliated him. I'd told them lies. How could I, when I knew how much this meant, when I was the one who'd always, and then the word came out, the one I knew was coming. Jealous. You're jealous, she choked. You've always been jealous of me, of us. You've got your big empty life and your sad little career, and I have someone who loves me and you couldn't stand it. Listen to me, I said, and I kept my voice as level as I could. I didn't tell them a single lie. I asked him questions about the lies he told. He's a fraud, honey. The resume is fake. He never graduated. He got pushed out of his last job over missing inventory. He couldn't break down a chicken in front of me. He said you'd say that. She shot back. He said you'd make stuff up. He said you couldn't even get a trail at a place like that yourself, you bitter. She stopped, hiccuping, and there it was. He'd gotten home before me and he'd doubled down. He'd taken his own humiliation and flipped it, fed the poor jealous failure story right back to my family because he was counting on them to believe him over me. He'd been counting on that all night. He said I couldn't get a trail there, I repeated. Yes, she sobbed. And I believe him. I closed my eyes. This was the part I'd been dreading more than the kitchen. Because logic doesn't work here. She wasn't defending him. She was defending the entire life she'd let herself imagine. His wins was her win. His credentials made her engagement real. I'm going to tell you the truth, I said. And I don't actually care if you believe me tonight because you'll believe it eventually. I didn't sabotage his trail. I conducted it. I own Cinder. I own the other place, too. I'm the chef. The shark he was so excited to impress, the one supposedly cleaning house, that was me. He walked into my kitchen and he fell apart because his whole career is a story he made up. Dead silence on the line. The Sabbason stopped. What? She whispered. Aunt didn't ask me, I said. She decided I got fired and you all agreed because none of you could imagine your sister just being that busy, that focused, that successful without making a show of it. You liked the version where I was struggling. It was easier. It made everyone feel a little taller. I let that sit. I have the background check. I have the public record on his school. I have the closure notice on his last job. I'll send you the parts I'm legally allowed to send. What you do with it is up to you, but that's who he is. Her voice came back tiny. Send it. I bundled the public, defensible pieces into a file and emailed it to her with one line. This is the truth. I'm sorry. And then I stopped, because I didn't know if she'd believe it, and I didn't know if she'd leave me, and I'd done all I could do. 2 weeks went by without a word. The text stopped. It was a strange, frozen quiet. I threw myself back into service and tried to forget the whole thing. And then a cream-colored envelope showed up in my mailbox, gold embossed, an invitation to an engagement party. That Saturday. A nice place downtown. They were still together. She'd seen the file and chosen the story anyway, or he'd convinced her the file was faked too. At the bottom, in my aunt's looping hand, please come. It would mean the world to your sister to have family there. Let's put all that unpleasantness behind us. Unpleasantness. My whole life's work reduced to unpleasantness. I knew exactly what that party was. It wasn't an olive branch, it was a coronation, and I was being invited to kneel. He'd be at her side, glowing, and my presence would be the proof that I'd lost. The sad cousin who came around and clapped for the man she'd failed to take down. They were writing me apart. I decided I'd take it, but I'd play it my way. I RSVP'd yes. Saturday night, I didn't dress like the poor relation. I wore the version of me they'd never met. Sharp suit, real heels, hair pulled back, the woman who walks into a vendor meeting and ends it in 4 minutes. The private room went quiet when I came in. My sister and her fiancé sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by family and friends, and when he saw me, his smirk came right back. He thought I'd come to surrender. I sat. I endured the toasts. I let him talk loudly about the toxic, jealous culture at that restaurant, how he dodged a bullet, how the people running it were bitter and unqualified. He never looked at me. Every word was for me. And then, over coffee, my aunt stood and tapped her glass and welcomed him into the family. A man of such integrity, such drive, such success. And he rose, kissed my sister, and lifted his glass. Thank you all, he said. It means everything, especially after the last few weeks. As some of you know, I was targeted by a very jealous, unstable person who couldn't stand to see me win. But talent rises, and I'm proud to tell you I just accepted a senior position at Vereen, one of the best restaurants in this city. Our future has never looked brighter. He looked right at me when he said it. Checkmate, he thought. I stood up. The room went still. I'd like to make a toast too, I said, and lifted my water glass. His smile flickered. My sister looked like she might be sick. To the truth, and congratulations on Vereen. It's a beautiful restaurant. I let that land. I should know. Hugo, the chef owner there, is one of my oldest friends. I started walking, slow, along the table. He's right that he was targeted, but not by a jealous person. He was targeted by his own resume, and he wasn't recruited by Vereen. He was placed there? What are you talking about? My aunt snapped. Sit down. You're making a scene. After he was removed from my kitchen for fraud, I said. I had a problem. He was about to be family, so I made a call, not to hurt him, to contain him. I told Hugo I had a candidate with a real gift for fiction, that he was engaged to my sister, and I'd take it as a personal favor if he could find him a spot. Somewhere he couldn't do any harm. Somewhere the title sounds wonderful on a business card and means nothing at all. I turned to him and he was the color of raw flour. The role they built you is in their community meal program. You'll be coordinating the donation pantry and the charity dinners. No line, no knives, no menu. You report to Hugo's events manager, who reports to my GM. I get a summary every Friday. And the salary they're so generously paying you? It bills straight back to a discretionary account at my company. You don't work for Vereen. You work for me. You could have heard a pin drop on carpet. You, he managed. You're welcome, by the way, I said. You wanted a prestigious job at a famous restaurant. You've got one. The catch is you actually have to show up 9 to 5 every single day. And if you ever lie on a document again, or if you are anything less than perfectly decent to my sister, that title and that paycheck vanish, and the next conversation is with a lawyer, and your name never works in this city again. I'd thought, the night I set it up, about whether this made me cruel. I decided it didn't. I could have called the police about the inventory. I could have made sure he never cooked anywhere. Instead, I built him a soft, well-lit room he couldn't lie his way out of. And I did it mostly so my sister would have time to see him clearly before she signed her life over. She was seeing him clearly now. Tears were running down her face, but she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at him, really looking, and something behind her eyes had gone quiet and final. She reached up, slid the ring off her finger, and set it down on the white tablecloth in front of him. She didn't throw it. She placed it, gently, like she was setting down something that had never been hers. We're done, she whispered. I put my glass down. My apologies to the rest of you for the unpleasantness, I said, borrowing my aunt's word back from her. Please, enjoy the cake. And I picked up my coat and walked out, and the only sound in that room was my heels on the floor. She showed up at my door the next afternoon with a duffel bag and sunglasses she didn't take off. Can I stay? She asked. He's at the apartment, packing. I don't have anywhere else. I didn't say anything. I just stepped back and held the door. For 2 days she barely spoke. She slept in the guest room and drank the tea I made and stared out the window at nothing. On the 3rd day I came home from service and found her in my kitchen, badly attempting a pot of pasta, and without turning around she said, I'm so sorry, I wanted to believe him so much. I wanted the perfect life he kept describing. Her voice cracked. He admitted all of it after you left. The school, the job, the missing inventory. He wasn't even sorry, he was just furious that you caught him, that you had more than he did. She finally turned to look at me, her face blotchy and bare. I told Aunt to leave you alone, by the way, she's livid. She says you humiliated the family. I told her you were the only one who told me the truth. The only one who actually protected me, even after I was so awful to you. We're family, I said. It's complicated. No, she said, shaking her head. It's not. You were good to me. I was an idiot. Can you forgive me? I already have, I told her, and I meant it. Standing there in my kitchen, no filter, no fiancé, no curated anything, she just looked like my little sister again, the 16-year-old I used to drive to school, the one I'd have walked through fire for. She stayed 3 weeks. We talked more in those 3 weeks than we had in years. About the pressure she felt to have a perfect, postable life, about the parents we both still missed, about how scared I'd been all this time that the restaurants would fail, and I'd lose everything quietly with no one even knowing I'd tried. He showed up at Vereen that first Monday, by the way, and Hugo told me he was a model employee. Quiet. Punctual. Out the door at 5 on the dot, running a food pantry he had no power to ruin, drawing a paycheck I signed off on. A small, fitting kind of justice that nobody would ever call dramatic. My aunt eventually stopped sending furious texts. Once she understood the story she'd been telling for 10 months had been wrong the whole time. The family gatherings are smaller now, and quieter, and a lot more honest. I'm not poor, struggling Amelia anymore. Sorry, I'm not the failure they invented. I'm the one with the restaurants, and I think they're a little afraid of me now. which, after everything, I've decided I can live with just fine. My sister turned out to have a real eye for the part of the business I'm hopeless at. The photographs and the words and the way a place tells its story online. And she runs that side for both restaurants now, and she's good at it. Channeling all that energy into something true instead of something curated. I didn't get my validation from them in the end. I got it from the work and from one repaired relationship that mattered more than all the others combined. And honestly, that turned out to be enough.